All right, howdy, folks. It is July 8th. Hope you had a great long weekend. So today's agenda for the Security Collab space is related to the CVD guidance and workbook and runbook. So to kind of get started, let me share my screen to kind of give folks kind of walk through this really quick. Um, because it's kind of hard to do like content comments in this, and people are used to using Google Docs. I did also copy paste this in the raw markdown into Google Docs. So if you have any comments or things on content itself, I suggest doing it in the Google Doc, which here I can show this really quick here too. Um, But if you want to see what it really looks like so far, check it out in HackMD with the Markdown. So to kind of get started, this is still a little bit of a work in progress, but the fundamentals of this is meant to be a run book first written for larger teams that are organizing the response to a security vulnerability report that comes into them. The way I approach this, just to kind of manage expectations, is that it's a little process heavy, and the reason for that is from an experience that I had with one of the projects earlier this year when they had a more intense security vulnerability disclosure situation. And being inspired by the observations and lessons learned from that, I started from like process heavy and intend to would rather start a little bit on the process heavy side and then boil it down a bit than start on the process lightness side and then have to add things as necessary. Um, in the introduction, there's kind of a heads up that this is for um, medium to large teams. That means basically like three or maybe four or more folks. But in the back of my head with this, for the next iteration is a version for solo maintainers and like one or two projects with like solo maintainers and one or two folks. So to kind of go through it really quick, there's some concepts here. One, there are a few phases to this. The first phase that this talks about is tier one triage. And this tier one triage is basically just initial acknowledgement of the report itself. Um, there's references to templates that I still have to write in here. There is a lot of information, especially on that initial response, to make sure that kind of like a decision tree almost. I didn't write it exactly like a decision tree just because it's in Markdown. I think I found that a little challenging to do decision trees just in Markdown. Um, and then excuse me, tier zero triage, not tier one triage. This is a edit I need to fix. Tier zero triage for that initial acceptance. Then there's this concept of tier one triage, and tier one triage is about actually doing root cause analysis, coming to some opinion on whether the vulnerability is valid or not, whether or not the report itself is valid, like as described, is actually the vulnerability, or whether or not the vulnerability is something else, and driving consensus amongst a large group of people to ensure that there's a shared understanding, like everybody has the same understanding of the vulnerability, and coming to a shared consensus on the right next steps for that vulnerability. So there's steps along the way after decision making to also go for the buttonology of how to update and respond and communicate with the researcher themselves. Here you can see here what I was talking about for tier one triage. One of the things to keep in mind also is that, again, being on the process heavy side, there are defined roles and responsibilities, and this is inspired by more of an incident response plan because, frankly, on the more simpler side of vulnerability disclosure, a lot of this stuff isn't necessary. But when things get intense, when things get like really serious, this kind of formality can really help um, drive easier collaboration amongst a group of people. Um, and there's also call out for like very extreme situations in which where you basically, if you ever find yourself in these situations, you should probably just stop what you're doing and call somebody because they're, a lot of there's these are really extreme. And then it goes into kind of the high levels of the fix itself. And honestly, the part where we talk about doing the fix is the lightest part of the run book, of course, because that's just software engineering. And the run book kind of assumes that projects have their own way of documenting bugs, have their own methods of describing how, in their own words, the root cause and how they expect to fix the bug, how they like to write their test plans, and things like that. And then near the end, which is the parts that are left that'll be finished today, are real focused on releasing the fix, publishing a security advisory, getting confirmation from the researcher, um, and things like that. So yeah, Jordan, you mentioned before we started recording that you had some thoughts and questions. Why don't we jump into those to start?
Yeah, I mean, initially it was just at the where is it? The primer, the research communications primer. Um, so like the specific part about researchers don't live your software like you do. Um, I definitely never expect that researchers are intimately familiar with the project, but I do expect that they are intimately familiar with the language the project is written in or the platform it runs on. And it is especially when their claim of a vulnerability is stated very bluntly and confidently. Um, Obviously, I still want to be like kind and empathetic and whatnot, regardless. But like, um, it is the vast majority of cases where the people proposing a vulnerability don't actually understand multiple of those pieces unrelated to the project. So I don't know how or if that affects this section. That was like the first thing I perked up at.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think I appreciate the call out, like highlighting that because like, I wasn't sure. I think the next step on that is to really is as a part of the primer is how to, now that that situation is stated, um, is how to navigate that situation effectively. And that's where we get into the
Right,
templates on how to gently let them know that, hey, I see where you're coming from, but here, let me
right,
explain why that's not necessarily correct. Um, it could be frustrating to have the burden of educating a researcher who is very confident
right.
on their bug to
It's
educate them on the technology that they're testing. But yeah,
right.
it's
I
extremely
mean,
common.
it feels akin to when a non-native speaker of a language confidently attempts to correct a native speaker on the usage of the language. They might be
That's right.
correct, but it's very rare that they're correct. Usually it's, a misunderstanding. And so I don't know, it might be useful to have some more pros to help maintainers respond graciously to that
Yes.
level of arrogance.
Yes, absolutely. One of the sections here is on, let's see, let me find it here. Uh, uh there's a section here. Oh, where um, the guidance is to actually explicitly document where the researcher assertions are incorrect,
Mhm.
and to explain and to like write down why that is the case. And the reason for that is in later communications to use that copy as a part of the
Mhm.
researcher as the response to the researcher when you decide on severity and the fix and the actual impact of the bug itself. So capturing um, the terminology I use here is unsupported and erroneous. It's a nice way of
Mhm.
saying it.
Sure.
But you're absolutely right. And so this idea of capturing those assertions and documenting where they're incorrect and then communicating them is threaded throughout the document itself.
Okay. And then the other broad sort of feedback I had was like, who, first I wanted to ask, who is the audience for this document?
This is for projects who are looking for a run book for their vulnerability disclosure programs. So this
So this,
assumes that they, oh, go
mhm,
ahead.
was just so given that,
Hmm.
um, this reads like very long legalese, and run books are something you need to be able to follow when you're woken out of bed by a page at 3 in the morning. And I can I have a lot of trouble following through it. It certainly seems very thorough. And the parts that I didn't read all of it, obviously, but the parts that I read are, because I only got access like 10 minutes ago. But the parts that I read are like they all seem correct, but I wonder, is there a way that this could be reduced to like a 3 or 4 paragraph set of instructions, or like a 10 to 20 bullet point or less list? Because like it that the reason I asked about the audience is that this seems appropriate if you're trying to convince a bureaucracy that you're doing a good job. This is what you'd need to prepare. But if the audience is the project maintainers, then like they still need to have fun with their project.
Yeah. So two things. First, this initial version of it is written assuming a lack of experience, and so the level of detail isn't about like bureau isn't the intention is not like bureaucratic like CYA. Instead, it's education on to the rationale and why they're doing something. So, in other words, like the situation you're talking about, like at 3 a.m., you've never done this before and you have a lot of decisions to make and you're not exactly sure precisely what to do or why you need to do them because there's only so much detail on the mechanical parts that we could put in. So explaining concepts throughout the way is baked into this, and that's meant for education. However, on the second point, you're absolutely right. This needs like a condensed version that they can explicitly very quickly follow. And so there's this idea I have that um, there's a template that they follow that they put into this uses the run book suggests using GitHub discussions rather than a GitHub issue because there's nice threading and comments and stuff like that. Um, Whether people choose to use it, like whatever. But the idea is that there's also going to be like a templated checklist they use that they can keep track of along the way in a GitHub issue or in a GitHub discussion that kind of keeps things at like a more checklisty sort of level. Um, so that is like an easy to use reference, and then this is the more detailed like instruction manual.
Yeah, I mean, if that fair enough. It's just, but also like the other analogy that popped in my head was, have you ever seen that YouTube video where the dad tries to tell his kids how to, or his kids tell the kids tell him how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he does literally what they say, and then like he puts the jar of peanut butter on the loaf of bread when they say put the peanut butter on the bread, and right, and
Yep.
it's a useful exercise. It's a great teaching exercise for
Yep.
to try and think about the actual steps involved, but like when you explain how to make a peanut butter sandwich that way, it's like 10 pages long versus like, you know, put the peanut butter and jelly on the different slices of bread and slap them together, right? And this sort of document reads like the long version. So I'm wondering, like, because a lot of these things, like 3 sections can be done in one. Like, I read it, yes, that looks correct to me. I ran the code, it
Yep.
works. Like it validates it. Like,
Yep.
and now I've gone through a third of the document, and so that suggests to me that maybe that's not required to state.
Um, I think the I I disagree. Just having
Mhm,
supported so many of these and built so many run books in the past, and also training and educating commercial teams on the subject to make sure, like,
mhm,
to help out folks who are genuinely want to do a great job, but when as a consultant you're gone, like they're by themselves. So it's
mhm.
from that experience and perspective that I wrote it. But I totally get the analogy you're talking about as well, and so I'll take that feedback to make sure that it's not. Um, this is
Well,
like the
and
initial kind of write through. So like I
totally.
I when I've gone back through sections, I'm like, okay, I can be a little more to the point on some of these things. There's a level of precision when I first wrote it that I wanted to like get everything down to
Yeah, yeah.
paper. But yeah, the assumption is that um, maintainers who have no experience dealing with this situation are going to be by themselves, and there's a lot of questions that come up along the way. Chris.
Right.
Yeah, in regard to the recommendation for discussions, I think we might want to examine that a little bit more because GitHub sunset team discussions, it might actually be completely removed now.
Oh, for
And
real?
so yeah, and so there are
Yeah, it was removed about a year
like
ago.
and the permissions of like, as there's no direct replacement, but what they said to use instead isn't analogous one to one. So I'm not sure that discussions will provide a way of maintaining the privacy required for this, and like using the GitHub private vulnerability reporting, everything is all the what we would what I would refer to discussions, but I don't want to be I don't want to overload the term that we're referring to the GitHub feature. All the chatter we would have about a potential issue would happen in the context of the security advisory um, within PVR, which looks like and basically behaves more or less like an issue and how you comment on it. Um, so there might be other like possibilities with using like projects or organization level discussions, but I my fear is just making sure that the um the privacy required and the permission levels and everything are do not accidentally leak anything.
Yeah, it's a great. It's a that. Thanks for the heads up on that. The idea here, which is not put into this document yet, there's a kind of a side document on like setting up your program that is not as cleaned up as this one, and in that one, the it suggests creating a private repo to do this stuff in. One, because yes, the PBR, the concern about using the security advisory issue itself with for discussion is that that's visible to the researcher, and so there needs to be someplace else that is only internal to this idea of a defined like security team or working group within the project that has a space to do that. So I'm not sure if that resolves the concerns on privacy or not, Chris. Um, Suggesting creating a private repo to do all this stuff in.
um that would certainly uh address any permissions issues that you wouldn't be able to address with discussions necessarily. Uh, I don't know that, yeah, I don't know how much of an ask that is of folks to create a repo for it. Like it's something that's like really easy to do, but also something I could see folks being like, I don't know if I want to create a repository. So um this may be something that would benefit from like having some options uh,
Yeah.
for stability.
Um, what are your thoughts on alternatives? So like this is something that was kind of just an initial shot in the dark for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to give it some thought because I never really thought about it. I always use the GitHub advisory, and the other communication channels outside of GitHub itself.
Mm.
Um, but you know, whether that's Slack or what have you. So I don't know. I'd have to think about it some more.
You know, it's interesting you say that because in the initial version of this, I did write it around Slack and and having discussion in Slack, and then I kind of moved over to doing it in GitHub. So um, um, what I'll do is I'll have like the private repo idea, and then I'll also include the idea of using Slack. Oh, sorry, Ben, I only just saw that you had your hand up.
That's okay. I don't want to. You should finish your thought. I can speak later.
Sure. So yeah, that's a good call out, Chris. So I'll put the stuff about Slack and how to organize communications and discussion and keep track of things in Slack back into the doc. I didn't really take it out, but I didn't flesh that out as much because I wasn't sure about suggesting that. So that's really good feedback.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a replacement for having something discussion. There is a lot to be said for having something in a more um permanent place. Chat providers are fine, but like especially in the case of stuff like Slack, where if you're not paying for it, you're going to lose your information
Mm.
effectively. Um, so like you know, transient conversation, there's a place for that, surely, but also long-term stored information probably also deserves to have a spot in the equation as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more thoughts on this. Definitely noodle on it, and we can put it on the agenda for next week. Ben, what were your thoughts?
I was kind of noodling with Jordan's feedback, and sorry, Chris, I wasn't. I was I was reading through the document and you were talking, but I think I agree with Jordan a bit. Like I was just trying to grok this document, and there's a lot of stuff in here, but it's hard to tease out what the actions are. I'm imagining folks are probably going to skim this, right? Um, so I think there is something around creating like an easy to follow checklist, maybe that like references these things, but to have a much more like task oriented um, document for folks, because as described, that's the intended use. Um, so yeah, that was just my feedback.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ben. I think I'll keep that in mind and how I approach the rest of this because there is the education aspect, but it's also meant to be used in the moment itself. And so I'll let me go back and see if I can find that balance for this, because I don't want to create something that's like impossible to use at the same time either. So cool. Um, anyone else?
Are you sorry, anyone else for just feedback in general or on this topic?
On the topic? Or feedback in general, yes. Alrighty. Yeah, kind of a short meeting today. Wanted to just kind of kick off feedback and discussion on this. Oh, Chris, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought that when you said this topic, I thought it was more specific. The you have some roles in there of which I do not recognize. Um, I am wondering if there may be if it's if any of the roles that you have defined there are like have a one-to-one with like the roles in the cert guide or the GitHub advisory roles. I think that would be good to be consistent in the names of them.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if like triage lead is analogous. I have not read your document as I've just kind of looked at it. I briefly glanced at the roles. Um, so like fix reviewer, uh, fix approver. I think these are things that I think we could, if we could be consistent with some of the other guides, that would be helpful. If triage lead is like a coordinator, I don't know. If they're not analogous, then that's fine.
They're
And
more
then I
functional roles, I guess. That's kind of the challenge, right? It's like um, they're more related to who's doing what from an analysis and understanding perspective rather than like um, the I'll go back and look at the GitHub advisory guidance and stuff like that just to make sure if there's a way for me to align it. But um, it's more about who is producing what deliverable is what the roles are based around. But I'll keep that in mind and I'll go back and take a look. The challenge um, with some of the guides, it's more about the high level process organization rather than the development of understanding the deliverable itself, I guess. But let me go back and I'll take a look at that.
okay, thanks.
Cool beans. This is great feedback, folks. I really appreciate it. This is really um, it's a large document. It's a process that has a lot of nuances to it that can go right and wrong. So I'm looking forward to getting y'all as I work on it more um, today and the rest of the week to get y'all's more feedback. And I'll definitely keep all this in mind and go back and do a lot of edits so that we can get this into a good place for V1. This is going to be like an ongoing doc for the rest of the year, of course. So no, doesn't have to be perfect today, but I definitely want to make sure that everything that folks have put in here, all the feedback that folks have given me so far, does get reflected this week. So I appreciate the inputs. Anything else, folks?
Yeah, any other topics?
Nope, that's it for today.
So I might have one.
Alrighty, let's go, Ben.
All right, so let me get up the GitHub issue because this might be relevant here. If it's not relevant, that's fine. And we can. So let me just add this to the agenda first. Sorry, I should have done this beforehand, but I just thought about it. So
No, it's all good.
I filed. Let me give some background here. So I've been working with LFIT on a lot of the sovereign tech fund stuff, and one of the things that came up is they're like, hey, there's this common practice at the LF of adding this like the Linux Foundation GitHub user, basically adding an admin user to like projects under each organization, right? This is done elsewhere, right? And I was like, oh, okay. Let's float this as an issue and see what folks say. I was kind of expecting a good amount of discussion about this because there's obvious concerns, right? And so I followed the issue. There's actually a lot of discussion, good discussion that's come out of this. And so essentially the goals here of adding this user, it's basically to negate the risk that we have on certain projects where the maintainers go away and then we have no ability to do anything in the GitHub repo, right? So this did actually happen, and there's a project that I'm currently working on to archive, and like I need to set the the GitHub repo to archive, and I can't. And I'm like hunting around and spelunking to try and find someone. So I think I think what's going to come out of this is probably a variety of options that we can give to projects to accomplish this. And one of the things I saw recently that was kind of interesting was like we should have an option for um, small projects and large projects, right? Large projects, I think Electron was commenting in here. They're like, we don't have this issue. There's like 15 people on here, right? And like that is true, or at least it's true now. But yeah, I feel like I want to have some break glass option for all of our projects. So I'm still letting the discussion percolate. You know, I haven't condensed everything to a new recommendation yet, but I at least wanted to broach it here to make folks aware of it.
So with this, I'm just kind of looking at the issue right now. Is this um, it would be using the actual Linux Foundation's admin account, not something new that was created specifically for OpenJS.
That was the initial proposal was what you stated first, right? Was to give GitHub to give LFIT um, this capability, but I think that what we actually do is going to wind up being quite different. So yeah, you know, we might create if folks are okay with it and if it's the right thing to do, maybe there is a foundation one, not an LFIT one. Yeah, but I haven't really rewritten the recommendation with everyone's feedback in mind yet.
I mean, okay.
Is the only beside the break glass we need it for archival purposes, or if um, a solo maintainer falls off the face of the earth, is there any other like use case for this that would result in this account needing to be used on a regular basis?
No, to be honest, there really isn't.
Okay.
Jordan and then Chris.
Oh, yeah. So obviously each project is going to have different opinions, constraints, needs, whatever. And so there's probably going to need to be more than one way to do this. For
Totally agree.
NVM, what still sticks in my head as the best solution would be that the OpenJS GitHub Enterprise account owns the NVM SH org. And that way I don't have to add any individuals as security people.
Yeah.
And only people who have admin access on the enterprise, which should be like the most zealously guarded role, would be able to step in or appoint someone to step in. And there would be all the audit logs available whenever that did happen. And it would only be done in the extreme situations. So that I still would like to see that. It's fine if somebody a project doesn't want to do that. Then we should hear those reasons. But
I think Jordan, you're absolutely right. I think that will absolutely be one of the options for projects that are both okay with it and where we can actually move the structure without impacting anything negatively. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, the org doesn't have to change visibly, right? Like, and a GitHub org's membership in an enterprise is invisible to everybody who can't see the enterprise dashboard. Like, which is also why open source people have no idea how the function works, because like GitHub is not displayed it in any way. Right.
Yeah.
But so like there's the only org structure I would think that would conflict with it is if it's already in a GitHub enterprise account. And Node might be the only one that does that. Maybe Electron, I don't know. But like the vast majority of the projects are not going to have
some poking around both to understand how the impact projects currently are structured, and then also how GitHub manages this. And there's been some funky stuff with GitHub orgs in the last week or so that I still don't entirely grok. So, but yeah, your feedback is completely valid. I think that will definitely be one of the options. Yeah.
Cool.
Chris?
I lowered my hand.
Oh.
I think it was going to be a response to Adam's question about what scenarios there were. And you answered it. I did lower my hand, but I'll say it anyway. I think with stuff like this, it's important that we should be careful not to overcorrect. Um, like the problems that you want to solve for are absolutely valid problems. But like, is the thing, we want to make sure that the thing we do to potentially obviate those problems or solve those problems,
Yeah.
isn't putting us in it, like that we're not worse off, right? That we're that
Mhm.
this is worth the weight of the additional. We don't know what it looks like exactly yet, right? We've thrown some options out, but whatever we're going to do, make sure that whatever additional work or overhead or maintenance stuff that we're adding to it, doesn't leave us with a sort of net negative, on balance.
Yeah, yeah, that's good feedback.
Yeah, I just looking through this really quick, and my only real feedback is having a really really tight plan around security of that account and basically making an account impossible to use, um, except when only absolutely necessary, to the point where like there's so much friction that it can't be used quickly. Um, and it takes like somebody has to go to a safety deposit box, or somebody has to go grab a hardware key somewhere or something like that, to
Yeah, I
re-
think Yeah, I think like from the feedback that I've seen so far, like I think that we'll probably allow projects. I don't know if we're going to allow projects to use the LFIT account or not at this point. And the reason I say is because a couple folks brought up some really good feedback about this, like, hey, this is actually kind of against GitHub's terms of use. And like if at all possible, we should probably avoid doing things that are against their terms of use, considering how much free stuff they give us. So I'm taking that really to heart. So I think, we'll probably have some criteria like for large projects where there's multiple people involved and like they're really low risk for this happening. We'll probably not do anything, or we'll give them the option maybe of joining the organization or doing something like that if it's helpful to them in some capacity, but probably nothing. I think for single maintainer projects or projects that are like drifting towards being archiving, we're gonna have to figure out something else. I don't know what that recommendation is going to be, but I also won't be making that recommendation on my own. Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, as I have not been secretive about in my comments on the issue, very opposed to the entire, actually not just for the OpenJS Foundation, but the entire
Yeah.
Linux Foundation account is a terrible, terrible idea.
Hmm.
I think it should be eliminated like today or as soon as possible. But I'm not. That's not a battle. It's not a hill I'm willing to die on, or a battle I want to go to war for.
Yeah.
But the only benefits that an abstract account like that gives you are like, I guess maybe less administrative overhead, and B, if they're doing any actions here or there, um, if somebody looking at an audit log knows who it is, versus like if it's somebody's name, then they have to do a little more work to figure out what the
Yeah.
association is. But that account should be doing very little in the first place, so the latter problem shouldn't really be an issue. Nobody should be seeing the Linux Foundation account, or hypothetically seeing it do anything. And the former argument about being less stuff to manage, that's a really bad sort of security policy. Like you should not be making it any easier, especially for accounts that have the highest permissions in the land, um,
Yeah.
to do things in and especially in ways like that, where the identity of the individual performing the action is divorced from the account itself, which is what that does, which is very, very not good. Especially for the things that we're talking about this account doing, where we want to see who did that in an audit log. And you may say, well, there are processes where this is tracked and who accessed it at what time. Well, nobody has visibility in any of that. That does not give me warm fuzzies and help me sleep at
Yeah.
night. So I think that is just net bad. I want to see if there's an account doing something. We want to know who it is, who it's associated with, an individual human person. And I think that is not assigning whatever shape that this takes, assigning the relevant individuals to, whether it's enterprise administrator or organization administrator, should not be that much work. And, if it's that important, and that can be tracked properly as well.
Agreed. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
appreciate everyone who
this Linux and
commented.
Foundation account seems terrible. It seems terrible and terrifying. Like, unless there's Splunk rules where people get a push notification for every single thing that account does, it's not safe. Um, Chris?
Yeah, you're 100% right. We should be careful maybe not to do too much bashing here on the recorded portion of this.
It is
uh,
terrifying, though.
but yes, no, I completely agree.
Yep. And again, thank you for everyone for providing feedback. I'll try and condense everything into a new recommendation, and then we can iterate on it.
Cool beans.
That's all we got.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
Ulysses.
Oh, I have a side topic, just for 2 minutes. I think we're okay in time. Yeah, we're okay in time. Let me share my screen one moment. I was working on this idea of trying to make the Excels, I mean the Google Drive Excels that we have for all the security compliance guide and the documentation, like in one place with version control and stuff. So yeah, here's the first approach. Let me see if I can share my screen. Desktop number 1, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so you should be able to see like the original Excel. Yeah. Okay, so the original problem was like we have this huge Excel with a lot of how-to guides, sources, and stuff that was great for discussion on what we should include inside of the compliance. And also we have this like introduction to the topic, which is in draft version, right? So my idea was to try to move this to a GitHub repository, like as it is, to try to use in a script or something, and to make it more visually. So first of all, I move it to a Docusaurus website. So basically I move the document here as a like the welcome guide kind of thing. Then you have here the details, which is, well, let me show you first here. You have here like the implementation. So you can choose by, I mean, type of project. So let's say, for example, if you are Express, you can go to, I guess, Active, for example. And then you can see here like what is expected from you or recommended from you. So you have like 2 different tables, and you see like less items here in compared to this huge table. That's because I created also like a specific views per detail, basically. So you can go to, I don't know, multi-factor authentication, and you click on the details and you arrive on a specific item here. The thing here is we are using Markdown, MTX actually, which is a little bit more powerful than a typical Markdown. So you can embed videos and stuff like that, and still be easy. And in terms of source code and stuff, you have like everything here. There is a very basic like scripts on how to download and stuff, and how to update the items if we make some changes in Excel and stuff. And I assume in the future we will abandon this Excel and the document and we'll move progressively to here. So those scripts are not super relevant anymore. But you have here inside of the doc sections like everything there basically in terms of not sure why my internet is so slow now, but you should be able to see this, yeah, in the docs here. So you have here like all the details and the implementation, and you can just go here and make the modifications wherever you want, make pull requests around it, and so on. So it's very easy. It has support for Markdown X, which is a little bit more powerful than the regular Markdown. So you have like React components kind of thing. So we can go really fancy with the stuff that we can put here. Yeah, and also you have the typical dark and light theme and stuff like that, just out of the box. Yeah, so that was my approach. So yeah, we have this item 011 whatever title. So there are things to fix a little bit, but that was the idea to make it more easy for projects to start working on it. But yeah, it was a first iteration, so very open to feedback and ideas.
I love it, Ulysses. This is great. I love it for 2 reasons. One, it sounds like thanks to your scripts, now that I see how it gets converted, I can do some changes to the sheet to make so that the script can be rerun again. And so things are a little bit cleaner in the markdown version. And two, holy guacamole, this is like so much more functionally usable and it looks really nice. Ben, I'd like to get your take on this, given the discussion on so far on markdownifying this.
I mean, in the 2 seconds, I mean, I don't want to get distracted by the shiny thing that looks really good, because it does look really good. And I think, anything that moves us to publishing this faster, I think is a great idea, because we've done a lot of thinking, we've done a lot of work, but I still feel like that our projects and the greater JavaScript community hasn't been able to consume this stuff to start benefiting from it. So I feel like the more that we can do to push this stuff out, and I'm okay pushing stuff out that's not perfect. Like, this is the great thing about open source, is you put something out there and everyone comments and things get better, right? And so I think if we can push Jordan, I know, right? People are both great, and yes, people are great. So yes, I love it. Can we move quick on this? Like, can we publish stuff out and get things working?
Yeah, I published in like a Netlify kind of thing. So yeah, if anyone make a pull request to that is working, I can transfer the project to the org or whatever, if
Okay.
that makes more sense, because now it's like a personal project. But yeah,
Yeah, we
easily.
should probably transfer it over. But yeah, like this would be great to start getting this published and live, and we can iterate on it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Ulysses, let me follow up with you on this on some details so we can move this over a bit. Just so everyone else knows, Ulysses showed me kind of an early version of this like a month or two ago, and I'm really happy to see how this wound up working out. And those scripts are really a big deal. So thanks so much for the work on this, and I'm really happy that you came through with it. It's great. I'm a huge fan. I I really like the structure and visualization aspect of it. I think it makes it really great and easy to consume. And also, when I think about the CVD guidance and things like that, I also look to this as an example and inspiration, because as much as it's a noble goal to make it possible for everything to be viewed directly in GitHub and Markdown, there's a lot of things that it's just really hard to look at large amounts of content like that sometimes. So having this web layer is really, really nice. How does this, in terms of if we get to move to the project, is there anything that the foundation, if we move it into the Collab space, is there anything the foundation needs to do to actually run the site at all?
I'm using, I think it's Netlify. Yeah, because it's like a dynamic website. So yeah, I'm using Netlify in the free tier, whatever. So when
Okay.
we do like pull requests, also you can preview the changes. So it's even easier. So if you mess up with the Markdown X and stuff, it's easy. And should be fine, I guess. If we get if we need like more infra, whatever, the project is Dockerized as well. So it can run as a container, whatever it is on the Linux site infrastructure that we want. So that's an easy thing. And I think the only big requirement is for me to make the transition like from my personal account to the organization, which I'm not very sure if I have the permission or not, but I can check it out later with you or with Ben offline. But yeah, that's all required. The rest is easy, and also just still be able to watch. I mean, to visualize everything in Markdown, like you do in GitHub UI, without moving away. Like you only will have some weird tables at the beginning of the stuff, and maybe some weird symbols. But aside of that, the rest of the content is easily readable.
Ben, from an infrastructure perspective, how do we run Docker containers in OpenJS anyway?
We don't really. We could. So yeah, I don't want to complicate things by switching around infrastructure. We can always do that later when something is published, is my gut feeling here. Like, we do have tons of free services from Vercel. I know Vercel can do Docusaurus,
Yeah,
I think,
probably.
really easily. So we can always move it to Vercel if we want.
Yeah.
I am the type of person that changes my blogging platform more often than I blog, which I'm trying to be careful of here. I think some of you are
Okay,
probably
cool.
in the same boat. Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, let's get this published this week because honestly, I think there's not from a content perspective, there's really not much else to do. I've been playing around myself with different ways of getting this into um oh, there we go. Awesome, Ulysses. It's great. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's work on getting this into Vercel and just making it official then because and what I now that I see this, if you, what I'll do is look at how things wound up rendering on your side, Ulysses, and making edits to the sheet so that things fill in a little bit more cleanly and we have 1.0 then. This is great. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh,
Chris
Chris,
yeah.
Hi.
2.5 minute warning.
No, I'll try to be brief. No, I really appreciate Ulysses taking the time to do this. I think it looks good. I am concerned that a couple of concerns. One, I do not think it's ready for publishing. I don't think it's quite there. I don't think there was a lot of feedback that we had in our discussions about the best way to present this content and how it's helpful to maintainers. And we haven't like moved the needle on that. I also, it's not very the way that it is right now is not very consumable through the repo. Like it's not there, like for a number of reasons. There's missing information. I think that we want to have like whether it's sort of introductory, how to use this guide, what are the expectations versus recommended. There is the I do see the about MDX, which does talk about that stuff though. There are broken links, for example, in the columns for the details. All of those links are broken, at least on the markdown side. And I don't think the items are organized in the way that we wanted to have them organized. Also, the way to make edits to this information, so the biggest thing for me isn't even like, okay, if you wanted to publish today, I would find that, like I said, I don't think it's ready, but if you wanted to, I could be convinced if it was a very straightforward, like how we're going to make changes, because that to me is the most important thing. It's not the getting the thing up at first, it's how we are iterating on this. And it appears that right now, the way to make changes is to update a Google Docs spreadsheet and then run some automation, all I have to go on here is with the manage changes in the README. And that is not really a sustainable, like nobody's going to want to do this or edit it. I'm certainly not going to want to do it and edit it. And this is a big problem we have actually with some of the OpenSSF guides, is that the process of updating the information is so annoying that it discourages contribution and discourages iteration. And I'm not saying that's quite what's happening here, but I want to be careful about that. And that's why, we talked about how to move forward on this. I was really trying to hammer home how important it is to start small and iterate and be able to make it as easy as possible to do this stuff. So those are my only comments, and I realize we're past time now. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback, Chris. 100% aligned. So yeah, I think first of all, like I don't think also is ready to be published, like in terms of people outside of this forum to consume it in a efficient way, because there are a lot of things to publish, right? In terms of order, in terms of structure, in terms of the idea was more like to have this kind of website approach to let like Express, maybe security working group, start to work on the idea of let's try to implement things and enrich the items so we can have a clear idea. That was my more or less target. And also in terms of updating the Excel, the idea also was to start migrating away from the Excel. So if there is something that we can do in a bulk operation, like for example, to add a new column to every item or something like that, then it makes sense to re-import the stuff. Otherwise, it's better to start forgetting about those formatted and start to move away and just move to the Markdown plus GitHub so we can have control version and more people can get involved in approving, reviewing, and so on. Also, we can get more fine later on details, like for example, to have the details with a good structure, with titles, this kind of thing. So maybe we can shape a little bit the metadata and the format and having some scripts to ensure that every detail is working as expected and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the idea, like from moving basically from one platform to another and having a way to visualizing and having source control. That was like kind of the basic. If we are happy with that way, the idea is start iterating over. Probably we are far to be ready for publish. So even as using Percel or Netlify for now, it's okay. We don't even have a serious domain now. It's like just experimental one, because it's a way of testing an easy iteration for the teams, right? So just changing the way of working.
Yeah, thanks. No, that all makes perfect sense. And especially, you know, your comments about having the automation for like getting us from one format to the other, moving us off that, and maybe having sort of at first an intermediate period where you're might be easier to make updates in the spreadsheet for the sort of the mass export to sort of reduce the amount of like manual stuff you have to do at least at first before it takes the more concrete shape. Yeah, totally makes sense. And yeah, and you know, I just want, I know I already said it, but I just want to emphasize again, you know, the thing does not need to be perfect to be published or whatever. I just want to make sure that like, you know, at the point that it is published, we have a very streamlined and low friction way to update and make changes, and that, and to your point about the automation, that the information architecture aspect of it and how things are structured should be one of the more uh, mature aspects of it, because that will be harder to do in a non-automated fashion, right? If you want to change where all the pages live and the details and how that structure. So that's actually the thing that maybe we want to sort of prioritize for this group and nail that down, because that's the thing that gets more expensive versus to make wholesale changes against, versus like updating, adding an item or updating the text of an item or details. Those are things that would not involve really should not involve significant you know, changes of where files live and stuff like that.
I want to do like a working session in this meeting next week to address some of these things. Is it efficient to work on this as a group or not?
It sounds like a little bit of a consensus is needed on a couple things. One, it sounds like content-wise, there's just a little bit of polishing needed for comprehension and consumption and the intro stuff to start. It sounds like there is also a question on the best way to organize this from a presentation perspective. And also there's a need to have an established process on how updates will happen going forward. My understanding from Ulysses was also that the Excel, the script would be like a one-time use just to get it out of Google Docs, and then we would move all future edits would happen in Markdown once that was done. So I could totally see there being a slight transition period where maybe we don't follow that exactly. So I think there is what I would want to do, and my objective right now is to get content into GitHub and out of the so that other people can start looking at it and providing feedback outside of this group. And I'd like to consider parallelizing that to the final presentation, to how we finally present it, because it sounds, in my sense, Chris, from all the feedback you've given, is that honestly, figuring out how to present and maintain this is actually going to probably be functionally harder than developing the content itself, maybe. And I just don't want to be in a situation where maybe the content's still living in an Excel in the spreadsheet, while we really try to get like the presentation aspect 100%. Chris, Ulysses, did that summarize your feelings well? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Chris unmuted and then thumbs up. So we're over time. Appreciate it, folks. And Ulysses, I'll follow up offline on next steps just to play around with this and get this in a good place so we can um, have this discussion next week. And so, yeah, let's go through these details and get things locked for next week. But it's nice to be in a place where we're really just working on like the polishing presentation details. So thanks everybody for the help and support. And happy Monday. Thanks, folks, and take care.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Doodles.